Welcome. This is Ms. Vitale's AP Biology Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. Over the next several weeks, we're going to be studying all of the different body systems in the human body, but also comparing them to the same body systems in other animals. It's really natural for us to be curious about how our bodies function, and as we've mentioned before, form and function is an overarching theme in biology. It's integrated into the common set of problems that all animals have to solve in their daily lives. For example, how do animals as different as Hydra, a halibut, a human, obtain oxygen from their environment? How do they nourish themselves? How do they excrete waste? How do they move? How do they reproduce? We're going to see how animals of diverse evolutionary history and varying complexity solve these problems. Anatomy is the structure of an organism, and physiology is studying the function of the organisms. Again, back to that form fits function theme. Natural selection can fit structure to function by selecting what works best among the available options presented by a varying population. Therefore, the form and function principle is another extension of that central theme of biology. When we look at the hierarchy of, we have to recognize emergent properties. Life is characterized by these levels of organization, each of them having emergent properties. Those are properties that were not present in the levels before them. Animals, as you know, are multicellular organisms with specialized groups of tissues. Those tissues are grouped into organs. To start with, a tissue is a group of cells with a common structure and function, and the term tissue is actually Latin for weave. There's 4 different categories of tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscular tissue. Let's start with epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is made of sheets of tightly packed cells. We find epithelial tissue covering the outside of animal bodies, lining organs, and lining the cavities inside of the body. If you look at this diagram, we can see that the cells are closely joined with little material in between them. We call the material in between cells the extracellular matrix. These closely joined cells in the epithelial tissue enable it to function as a barrier working against microorganisms, mechanical injury, importantly, fluid loss, so animals' bodies don't dry out. That's especially important for animals who live in terrestrial environments. The epithelial tissue is connected to a basement membrane. Those are cells at the base of the barrier, and that it's basically a dense mat of that extracellular matrix. We look at simple epithelial. This is a single layer of cells. If we look at stratified epithelium, this is multiple tiers of cells. And finally, there's pseudostratified, which is really a single layer of epithelial cells that appear to be layered because they vary in length. We also identify epithelial tissue by the shape of the cells at the free surface, at the exposed surface opposite the basement membrane. Cuboidal means the cells are shaped like cubes. Remember, these are 3-dimensional cells. Columnar, meaning they're long and vertical, or squamous, meaning that they are flat cells. Let's start with glandular epithelial. Glandular epithelial can absorb or secrete chemical solutions. For example, we find it lining the tubules in the thyroid, which secretes hormones that regulate metabolism. Glandular epithelia also lines the digestive and respiratory tract, and it forms something called a mucous membrane. A mucous membrane is a type of glandular epithelial that secretes mucus for lubricating and moistening. In your digestive tract, the food passes more easily through because the tract is lubricated and moistened by that mucus. In the respiratory tract, the mucus that is produced traps any microorganisms, dust, pollen, things that you would inhale that you don't necessarily want in your body. Also, the mucous membrane has a ciliated surface, so that cilia actually beats to move the mucus along so it eventually can be disposed of. Another group of tissue is connective tissue. Connective tissue is important in the body for binding and supporting other tissues. Unlike epithelial tissue, connective tissue is sparsely packed and it has a lot of extracellular matrix in between it. That extracellular matrix contains webs. Those webs are embedded in either a gel, a liquid, or a solid. There's 3 types of connective tissue fibers that we find in the matrix. Collagen fibers are made of collagen. They're also called collagenous fibers. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the animal kingdom because of its role here. Collagen is characterized by being non-elastic. It's strong and it doesn't tear easily. For example, there's a lot of collagen fibers that attach flesh to bone. A second type of fiber found in connective tissue is elastic fibers. These are long threads made of elastin, which is a stretchy protein. These elastic fibers are rubbery, and they complement the non-elastic collagen fibers. So when you pull your skin away or pinch it, it bounces back very quickly. The third type of fibers we find in connective tissue are reticular fibers. These are thin and branched. They're also made of collagen, and they actually are usually continuous with the collagen fibers. They join connective tissues to adjacent nearby tissues. There's a lot of different types of connective tissue found in vertebrates. We're going to start with loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue binds epithelia to the underlying tissues. It usually functions as a packing material. It can hold organs in place. It has a loose weave of fibers. And there's 2 types of cells that we find in loose connective tissue. Fibroblasts are cells that secrete proteins of the extracellular matrix. And macrophages are amoeboid cells that move around and engulf bacteria and dead things through the process of phagocytosis. Adipose tissue is simply fat. Adipose tissue, again, is a type of loose connective tissue, and the cells are called adipose cells. They're spread out through the matrix, and the adipose cells contain a large fat droplet. It swells when fat is stored, and it shrinks when the droplet is used as fuel. So when you lose weight, that droplet shrinks. When you gain weight, that droplet swells. Adipose tissue is important in animal bodies for padding and insulating the body. It's necessary to have a layer of adipose tissue underneath your skin to keep you warm. And adipose tissue stores fuel long term. Another type of connective tissue is fibrous connective tissue. This is much denser than loose connective tissue, and it contains a lot of collagen fibers. Those fibers are organized into parallel bundles. Fibrous connective tissue maximizes non-elastic strength in the body, and it's found in places like tendons and ligaments. Tendons attach muscle to bone, and ligaments join bones at the joints.